Cool. So yeah, Toby was saying he's not the most technical person on the team, but I was actually kind of laughing because I am a developer, but this actually, at least the labor token thing, it was a side thing to something else I'm working on a technical side, but there's really not much that from my side, I'm more a user, if that makes sense, then I didn't invent any of the technology. It's really just kind of bringing together some things that exist, which is like the Citizen Wallet application and using the blockchain and some LPs, which is more a crypto thing than I'm in this case, it's like I'm really just a crypto user, not really doing development here. If that, so I don't know if that's reassuring or not reassuring, but kind of can get pretty on the same page. So, any discussion we would have, like I know, Mateo, you've done a lot with Citizen Wallet, so you probably know the ins and outs. I can just tell you kind of as a user what it offers and stuff like that. And like more of it is like what the intention of the labor token is and how we're working on that and where eventually it goes, if that makes sense.
Good, good, good.
Hello.
Hey, Anna.
Hey, how
So,
are you?
hello, hello, hello. We are just getting started. The plan is a bit that, like TV was mentioning, he's not the technical guy, but he will make an introduction to non-dominium and how they are developing it. Maybe Shasha will join a bit later, and then yeah, Mati is here also uh, to share a bit about ours and to check if or explore if there is any possible thing to do together or what it is that there is any overlap or yeah,
Yep.
possible ways forward.
Yeah, I can just kind of dive into introduction. Sorry, I speak fast. If that's a problem, let me know. And also I speak too much. So please do not hesitate to be like, please calm down. But yeah, so ours and the whole labor token is just basically, it's a very small project that didn't take too much to get out there. It's just a way of on the crypto blockchain being able to say that, yeah, for anyone in theory, but especially non-capitalist groups, this is how much someone worked. Why is that beneficial? Well, you can go into the economic theory of labor vouchers and things like that. Um, what we want to do basically is just be able to give people a way to, all of us, I think, face the same thing where, unfortunately, in the current economic system, to do good things often comes at a personal cost. So part of it is from an economic point to just be able to at least acknowledge that, even if it's we have this. I'm originally from the U.S. I live in Spain, but in the U.S. they would talk about Beanie Babies or as like a thing of like ridiculous collectibles. Even as a Beanie Baby thing, it's a way to say that okay, well you did this. The hope would be that eventually we can use that more as a currency. And I don't mean like a strictly dollar currency. I mean just a thing of like saying that, hey, I did work for the community for this, therefore I should be able to trade that for benefits. It came about as a side project for the main work I'm doing in this space is on libraries of things. And the labor token was basically a way to where we could say, hey, if you're working or loaning things in a library, we want to incentivize that. We're going to give you this in return. And then one hope would be like some libraries that we will set up. Each library gets to decide how they want to do this on their own. That's a very important part of the thing of like the hours is everyone gets to decide what other hours are, what they're going to do with it. And it's very loose for that reason. But what we're going to do is say, okay, well, look, if you have a bunch of hours, like if you worked at a repair clinic fixing bicycles for the community, we love that, and we're going to let you skip the line. So, I mean, if both of you want to, if there's you who spends all your time helping the community and you want to borrow the tree trimming tool and someone else is just like, well, I wanted it first, we're going to give preference to you and take the hours in return, if that makes sense. So, but from a technological standpoint, all it is right now is just basically, I won't get too tech into the crypto stuff. It's an ERC20 token, just like any other stable coin, just like anything else. It's just a token that you can use an application or any blockchain wallet to give to people. And so the only thing is like we can get into how it's issued. Right now, there is basically an organization that's ruled by blockchain wallets. I think you're looking at the two members of it right now is myself and Mateo are the main people on the DAO. And basically what happens is any org, the way it should happen is any org that wants to have hours, If it's a minor thing, we'll take care of the buy-in. There's basically there's a deposit required, and that's just to prevent people from randomly coming in and deciding to vote. We can take care of that. It's there not to get money. It's refundable. It's just, again, it prevents random wallets from coming in deciding to drain all the funds in there because they have to put funds in. I can help with that if that's a thing for your organization. You know, again, it's just it's more of a captcha than anything. And then at that point, the organization just gets issued the hours, and you guys can do whatever you want with them. You can decide how you will accept them. You can decide, again, it's just a blockchain thing. My software development company, it's a tax deduction. I can deduct it, so that's why I take care of it rather than doing a community. It doesn't make me money, but it loses less. Why do I bring that up? We take care of the citizen wallet and stuff, so there's an application already there. Why is that important? Because people mention crypto, and understandably they get very like, oh God, A, is this a scam? B, is this like a crypto get rich quick scheme? It is not. B, I don't want to have to figure all this stuff out. You don't have to. There's an app already there that basically you can send anyone hours. You can receive hours from anyone. That's it. So, yeah, that's the big overall view of it, is just like, it's designed. The one thing we ask of anyone receiving it is to, like, hey, just make sure that you're paying people based upon their time. That's kind of the one thing and why it's called hours, as opposed to if you want to stick things of saying, hey, we want to have things worth X amount of money in dollars or euros. The bread chain project is where you want to be with that. This is just time based, and that the reason why is we're trying to get away from. We hold our reserves in bread, and we were very aligned with that. But this is a currency for when people want to get even further away from, for lack of a better word, capitalist money, if that makes sense, and recognize that people's time has been spent. And you can do both. Like, so for example, the people that work with me, anytime I've had a couple contractors that came on working on these volunteer projects with me, I make sure to pass them hours. You know what I mean? Like, I don't pay them just in hours because they're like, I can't spend these. I need to buy rent and stuff. So what generally happens is we agree, and I pay them what they want in money, and then also say, and by the way, hey, we're going to issue the hours is there for additional recognition of what you've done. Private or public, again, the idea is just that labor, the only thing we ask that you not do is A, start giving variable rates saying, oh, this person's time is worth more than that. Just no, recognize time. And B, and if you want to do elsewhere, do it in another form. And the only other thing would be we only do it for labor, right? Like owning things. This is where you get the non-capitalist thing. Like, just owning things should never be paid in hours. Hours is how much you worked, if that makes sense, or did something. So
is there
I know I'm being very vague. It is a very vague kind of concept. So yeah.
Is there metadata associated with that to say time for what?
There's not currently. You could absolutely, when you pay something, you could put, I believe, you can put a note on it. The other thing we could do, this would be the development in the future. So right now, the token just exists and you pay it. Long term, there's kind of two things we would want to do. One is we would want to
essentially it's just a token that is, you can use it for anything. It's just a name that makes it about time, and the community decides how to allocate it, right? When to. So there's a sort of a centralization of issuance within the community, or allocation, because you issue it on the blockchain. They allocate it. So the community decides how to allocate it in the community according to who does what, right?
Exactly. The long-term thing, and this would take a little bit of development, not to get too much into the tech, is to actually come, and so each community can decide. Right now, it's just the community as a whole, and you said it's a little centralized. So one of the steps in the future would be to decentralize, so that actually it's more a federated model. What do I mean by that? You can decide for your organization, hey, we accept X, Y, Z, but nothing else, or the reverse, like, hey, we're happy to accept anything, but we really don't like what this group is doing, so we're going to blacklist that. So you would have the ability to black or whitelist different hours. And the second part is you could do this now through the blockchain, but it would be better is to basically I don't want to say brand because that's the wrong term, but to stamp the hours. So for example, we can recognize the hours that your organization has as versus another. There's still interchangeable somewhat, but you could say that, well, we prefer these hours over that, and it gives you a little more freedom on that.
Yeah, well, that's the
go
whole
ahead.
thing here. That's the whole thing here because so within Sensorica we use time a lot as a proxy of contributions.
Sure.
But we also acknowledge financial contributions to a collaborative project, material contributions. So you could, for example, say, "Hey guys, for this project, we can come and use my garage because it's empty," or
Right.
here I have a 3D printer in my basement. I don't use it. I contribute. You have something to 3D print. This is my contribution to the project. I'll take it back after. So
Right.
so it's not just time, but time is a very important proxy. The problem that I see with the time coin is that the way we use time as a proxy, it's always associated with, first of all, roles.
Right.
Second of all, tasks. And third, with a description of what has been done.
Right.
So when you go back to the system and query the ledger of contributions, so you don't only have the
Right.
time as a proxy, you have the other things, financial and material. But let's say you want to filter out just time contributions. Well, you can get charts with, for example, we call that the role maps, which is a chart of how many hours people spend in that particular role. And that is within a project, within a venture. And that's also important because the way people subdivide their organizational structure into roles and the way they set up tasks, it's different project to project. So it's very important to say within this context of, I don't know, social contract, okay,
Right.
we have a roadmap, and it means what it means within this context. So that's what I'm saying is that we would need. I mean, it's just some feedback for you for designing this thing. If you want it to be like useful for people like us, we find it very important to say it's an hour doing what.
Right.
Not just because we want to create hierarchies or meritocracies and engineer is more important the guy that. No, that's not the issue, although some people are sensitive to that, but that's not mainly the issue. The issue is that if you want to go back and see what people did in this venture, like what did it take for this to happen, it provides you that granular description of the path to say, okay, it took so many people, and these people they self-organized into these roles, and they created these tasks with different priorities, and there is signaling there saying that this role is very important and this task is super super important, and they probably had to signal this importance because the skills were rare. Maybe they couldn't find people. So there's a
Right.
bunch of economic information that can get captured by expanding the time as metric. You know what I'm saying, and not just collapsing everything in one single dimension. An hour is an hour for everybody for everything. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, absolutely hear you. And we actually have,
Yeah. Go
yeah.
ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, we have the same thing with the library where it's like, hey, if I'm coming through and I'm donating a bunch, let's say I've got a bunch of old computers here and they're actually very valuable and I want to donate those to a library and I want to be recognized for that. And it's like, okay, how do you tie that in with the hours? And basically, one way you could say, yeah, we're just going to give you X amount of hours for that and we're doing it through exchange rate. It's not a problem, but long term, I think you would want to get away from that. For a near term, that's a great idea. I mean, for the long term, One way that's possible that I will be looking into in the library thing is to say, look, well, the library is going to have its own token, of library credits or whatever you want. We'll give you credits for the stuff you bring in, and those are exchangeable for hours. So you basically set up a liquidity thing so you can go trade them, and you can even let the market balance itself then, right? So if people are donating a lot, but not working that much, it actually gives a benefit because the hours become worth more credits. You see what I mean? Like you get kind of a balance of those different exchanges, and it can be a little self-correcting. And that's actually kind of what we have even on the reverse of the hours. Why do hours have value? Well, right now there's 500 bread backing them up in an LP. What is a bread? A bread, if you're not familiar with it, it's in the crypto leftist kind of space. It's worth $1, and the interest on that goes to fund left-wing causes. So there's a value, but what that means is if you've got an hour at any point, you can go trade it for X amount of bread. Now, if everyone starts going and trading their hours, the value of the hour goes down. Meanwhile, if people hold the hours or they want to buy them, the value goes up. It's not ideal, but that market provides kind of it can do what markets are supposed to do, which is provide, a ebb and flow of the value of things. To the data stuff, absolutely agree with you. And it's funny, I do this in day jobs sometime. I'm a data engineer by trade. We could, the blockchain can take data like that as well. And you could say that, look, when you want to give an hour, it's either optional or required to put in some information in order to transfer it. The harder part with that is just finding, we would need to do development on that to if it's required, say that any transfer on this requires this information. The other one would be B, making sure that, like, right now, like I said, we're using the Citizen Wallet, which is a great app to be available to do that. We would probably need to branch or work with them so that we could say that, look, when people want to do this, they need to provide this information and it gets put into the blockchain. The other part, though, of that is when you want to read that information, yes, you can get stuff from the blockchain, but it's not always necessarily cheap or easy. So like we'd either need a data provider, or what we could do is say, look, we're going to put that in the blockchain and send it. I don't like the centralization, but you could say when you send it, basically there's an app, and what that does is it sends it to a central spot and the blockchain stays the source of truth, but you also have a cached copy so that it's not like you're not having to spend a lot of money on blockchain information sources, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm more coming here from the user perspective. I'm telling you what works for us in real projects and what do we need.
Gotcha. Understand.
And that informs technical development. I mean, what I'm saying is that if you want people to use this,
sure,
it has to have some amount of granularity in order to capture what's needed to be captured. So not everything is needed to be captured, but some things are essential in order to be for the thing to become useful in a real environment. Absolutely. Right? People are gonna.
Let me double check. I'm just wondering, actually, because I have not used the app that much. Like I said, this is kind of a side thing. But I think when you send.
While you're doing that, maybe I can speak about some other thing here that I see it's pretty important, and then we can maybe move to non-dominium a little bit.
Actually, I wanted to ask you, TV, to give an intro about non-dominium, but if there is something else, go.
Yeah, I just wanted to add this. It's when we deal with time. The design question. One design question is always the representation of time. The representation, right. However we want to digitize that thing. Is it a transferable entity or a non-transferable entity? Can I give it to someone or not? It's like saying, here's a social media platform. Likes are currency. Right. Likes are currency. Okay. Should we make likes transferable? Should I sell you my likes? Like, what does it mean to sell you my likes? You know what I'm saying? Does it make sense? So the same type of question we can ask about time. It's like, I contributed time in this community. Should that be transferable? Maybe, but here's the thing. My time in that organization means more than just hours. Means my presence, and maybe people like my presence just because it's me as an individual. So that's important to be captured.
Sure.
And if I transfer my time to someone, that's lost. That cannot be transferred. Okay, because people may prefer X to Y to be there on Sunday morning and do that type of service, right?
Yeah.
And that time is a sort of an appreciation of the company. It's like a little bit like likes, It's like we appreciate that guy's presence. Because it's more than just being there and stuffing the role. Because he's got a great smile or he has a good approach, So there are use cases. What I'm trying to say is that there are use cases where that thing doesn't matter. It does not matter who we commodify ours, right? We commodify, so it doesn't matter which agent fills that role
Right.
in this particular context, and then time becomes commodified. Skills become interoperable, but in some cases, in some communities, it is not. Okay, so and it really matters whose time is it. You see what I'm saying?
It's a
So
very
that's just an
philosophical
example.
question. Yeah. One thing I would say though is time doesn't necessarily have to be exclusive. And what do I mean by that? It's like, you're saying like, hey, I want to reward this person for being part of the thing, and they're here on Saturday. It doesn't mean like, oh, well, they have to physically be there or something. It could mean they're available. It could be, I mean,
Yeah.
I work there's even a tech thing where it's like, yeah, some countries even recognize this where, okay, you have the right to call me after work, but you must recognize that time. You know what I mean? Because you're taking it could be a thing of like, look, I'm not going to be there, but if you call me, I'll drop whatever I'm doing and answer the phone. And literally
Yeah.
that could be recognized with hours as well. So that's one way to maybe look at it. I don't know. Yeah.
Mhm.
Like these are very philosophical things when we talk about it. The differentiation of labor, again, yeah, that's a hard thing. I would say what we want to see. And it's funny because one thing we were looking at. So there's Gnosis has the circles thing, which Metodo has, and that actually is more about trust and community and knowing people, and that even ties in with the likes thing. I know Brave tried to do the attention token thing, which was with advertising. There's other things working on there, and what I would say is like, yeah, I think that it makes sense to maybe do a combination of things or a combination of backing, and so like for simplicity, if you're like, hey, look, we want to recognize like 5 different ways that people contribute to the community, at that point it really might make sense to say, okay, look, we're going to go mint a coin. It's very easy to do that. I mean, like literally it's an email and a thing on the Citizen wallet. And then what we're going to do, and I can walk through with that, is like, we want to have hours. We want to make it interchangeable with hours, with circles, with things like that. And all you have to do is basically set up an exchange, and that takes again 2 minutes. So you could do it. You know what I mean? It seems a little out, and the one downside of that is we get a bunch of users that are turning into currency traders, and you don't necessarily know that. So maybe
Yeah.
what would be great long term is like a an extension to the wallets that exist that can kind of do these automatic trades, to say like, look, however you have credit within the community, we're going to recognize that and then trade it for whatever other people want, because the needs of the community, and this is the idea kind of the federation and the exchange in general, is the needs that I have as a library are going to be different than the needs you guys have within your organization where you're trying to recognize different gradients and stuff. We may or may not be interested in your gradients, if that makes sense. It's not nothing, but like we don't want to be overly involved. So it can be good to say, look, we'll boil it down to hours, but how you decide to reward those or exchange those within yourself is up to you. You know what I mean? It's kind of like
Yeah.
the external and the internal exchanges can be very different.
Well, yeah, maybe there's a segue into non-dominium here, and I think this is an architectural issue,
Yeah.
which is to say, which is to say, I think it's a better approach to decouple. It's a better approach to decouple a representation of reality from a valuation extracted from that representation. What I mean by that is to decouple information about what happened, so we can find ways to describe that, to put it in a way that is machine readable. And once we store what happened, to say this guy worked an hour for doing this and that in that role and whatever. Once that's there, then have layers built on top of that, and everybody can build their own layer. Everybody can make their own sauce with how that reality is interpreted, right?
Exactly, and they're good. That's kind of where we're at now. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to jump this in because it's exactly what you were saying within the hours thing of like saying, okay, look, the most ideal thing is you're within your own organization. There's a very specialized kind of token or store of value. When you have to go to other organizations, so I want to, Mateo, they have a bike exchange in I think Galicia, or I live in Barcelona. Okay, I'm on vacation there. I want to exchange this. They have no interest in my Barcelona library, but we could say, look, we both agree on certain principles, so we'll exchange our time, and there's an exchange there. There's even a lower one of people like my landlord, who obviously is a capitalist. He will not accept my time, my hours for payment. So at that point, I can go to bread. Well, he doesn't accept bread either. Great. I can take bread and even go to stable coins, which can be traded for currency. You know what I mean? So there's these layers of better and better money. But I think the key part to what you were saying is you can downgrade. You know what I mean? You can exchange one for the other, and that gives them a certain value. Because one problem with left-wing things is great, you can issue your own money, but if it's not exchangeable to other money, you have a problem because now you know what I mean. Unless you can provide everything, unless you are a commune and you are providing every need to your people, now you have a problem. So that's sort of I think where we get there.
Yeah, well, but essentially, what I wanted to put on the table here is the necessity to have a representation of reality first, before we even speak about tokens of whatever kind, because a token, what rests between a token and a reality is a process of valuation. And so it's like in physics, we talk about what are your quantification rules. How do you quantify the entity that you are observing? So that's the same problem here. You issue tokens based on an evaluation method, which is based on some reality. And what's missing in a lot of blockchain projects, it's that representation of a reality, as close to reality as possible. And that's not about having a token anywhere. It's just data. That is, it's structured data, but it's data. It's a ledger of this is what we call a ledger of economic activity, which is not tokenized in any way. And then once you detach that from the tokenization layer and think about valuation, then you can say, oh, okay, so we have a generic protocol to account for what's happening. And this is what we use in non-dominium and true commons and within way of thinking, that's value flows. So we have a method, we have a vocabulary to describe what happens. What happens? Okay, economically speaking, what's going on here? Well, we have agents, we have resources, we have events, we have processes. And this could be a variety of events. So there's a vocabulary to precisely, very precisely describe what's going on economically. So based on that vocabulary, then you have a very structured way of describing stuff that becomes machine readable, and you put that into a ledger, right? And then what we call benefit redistribution algorithms, which are essentially evaluation schemes, to say based on that reality and based on who we are as a community, how do we decide to to evaluate that? Okay, to extract whatever currencies, to abstract currencies out of that. What type of currencies we can have? Okay, so we can have here some monetary type currencies, things that we can trade and send to each other, and there are stuff that are not tradable or not exchangeable, things that are more representable, for example, by NFTs, like credentials, reputation, popularity, visibility, all that kind of stuff. So then you can, you can have your own sauce. That's the whole point here, is that provide groups with the independence. This is what we mean by value independence, is that we own our currencies, monetary and non-monetary. We own them. This is data that we have. There is no platform that has that. We own them. And second of all, we can make our own sauce, because this is what entrepreneurship means, is how do you compose an organization to achieve a goal in a very efficient way? And the art of the entrepreneur is in that sauce. And there is no, entrepreneurs are unique, they're artists, right? So the whole idea here is to say, give the people their give people have that data. People own the data of their own of their activities, from which they can abstract currencies, provide them with tools to abstract these currencies, and with tools to mix and match these currencies, make their own sauce. Because the way you mix and match your currencies, monetary and not monetary, this is what makes the DNA, the DNA of that organization. This is what makes that organization economically good or bad.
Right.
And I think I think the problem in the design space here is for people that like create platforms and say, here's the tokenization scheme. It's like,
Right. Yeah. No,
what do you mean? It's like, why you project that into our way of living and doing things? We have to be able to decide for what is the tokenization scheme. How do we mix these currencies that we abstract from our own data? We mix them together, and then we can make them interoperable with other organizations based on our agreements. So I think there is a Web 2 legacy here that we carry into Web 3 to say, we have your data, okay? We have the algorithm, and we use this algorithm for everybody the same into how to convert likes and shares and comments into monetary rewards. You're on YouTube, right? So they pay you something for your
right.
views, likes, and etc.
Like
But that's
if you
totally
haven't,
owned.
if you're not
That's
aware of it,
totally
definitely
owned.
check
So
out the BAT project, because they were working on exactly those same things. Now it was a private thing from the Brave browser, but it was exactly kind of what you're talking about, where they're like, look, we want to basically make interoperable the idea of attention, and so that you can basically, and having worked in ad tech, which is way more evil, it's like, okay, this is evil, but less evil, at least from my viewpoint, you know what I mean? So it's exactly kind of what you're talking about, and it's those mix of things to where, and to kind of to the point, I think what you're talking about is a larger idea of a defined currency of like, you want to reward a lot of things, not just time. And to be fair, I'll tell you right now, the hours thing, it's just based on time. So if that's part of the mix of what you guys want for your secret sauce, absolutely happy to issue those to you guys. If it's not, don't worry, not. But I think at that point, I'm very happy to show you guys kind of like, hey, this is how we set up the hours thing, because you could do the identical sort of thing and just recognize other things instead of just time. So, if that makes sense.
It makes, and provide people the ability to manipulate these currencies. I think this is where I'm getting at.
That's what I wanted to show you real quick,
It's
because you guys could follow along this actually has been a useful path. So with the labor token in general, basically the idea is like, okay, look, we're going to issue this. And like you said, there's a problem in crypto in general. People just throw out a token and say, oh, well, it's worth something. And it's like, why is it worth anything? What can I do with, you know what I mean? Like, if all I can do is speculate on it, it's not worth anything. So The idea of the hour token is like, yeah, we issue it only basically to people that say we're going to issue this to people that work. Da 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 da. That's great. That's what we're about. Not saying that has to be what you're about, but the way we do that and to provide a value is basically to come here on Curve and say, look, if you want, you can exchange hours for bread. Now it's a floating rate, is not a set rate. That's the difference. And bread, if you're not familiar with it, it's a great project. I think that actually that might line up more with what you guys are trying to do. Bread is exchangeable for US dollars. And so what we have is like, yeah, there's a way you can turn your hours into euros or whatever you want. It's not a one-to-one and it floats. That's part of the benefit, is because then the problem with bread is you have to have dollars and you have to have like real world resources to do this. This allows us to basically say, look, because the problem a lot of non-capitalist or community oriented things have is raising capital. So this is a way basically with your own currency to raise capital that you can say, and the bread does this as well. Bread is like, you could offer a discount to say, look, if you're within this area, we give you more resources for your hour than you would get by down trading, if that makes sense. So in your case, like if you guys had hours in the mix and you're convertible, you would probably want to say like, look, in some way, we're going to give you a better price if you use our currency. If not, and someone has hours, okay, we'll accept those and we'll accept that at a higher rate. If you have bread, we'll accept that at a higher rate. And finally, at the bottom, we'll accept euros, dollars, whatever, whatever money you have. So.
Yeah. Okay, so let me speak a little bit about non-dominium because this may be interesting for some people that are in the co-op space. To just as a little introduction here, so what we're doing with Sensorica is working on open value networks, which means that the organization is a network, which means that it's not a co-op, it's not a corporation. It's just an open network like Bitcoin. So that's a different type of organization. And I like co-ops because they've been there and people feel good about them, and they're vehicles, they're organizations, vehicles for people to put their efforts together to do something. And it works. It's great. I don't want to be judgmental about this. It's just to say that my headspace is to experiment with open networks to see what is their potential and where they can lead us, okay, as new type of vehicles. And they exist, so why not working a little bit on them. And so but in writing this application on holochain about sharing of resources, we obviously thought about it from a pure peer-to-peer perspective. Here's a bunch of people that get together as a network and mutualize resources to do something. And how do you make these resources flow within this network with very little friction? Okay, people being afraid that somebody's going to come from outside and steal our resources, borrow it, and walk away with it, or something like that, or break it, or I'm saying all these frictions about sharing resources. How do we diminish that? So we thought about it in the network kind of environment, but then we realized that that this application could be also used in a B2B space, like one co-op or multiple co-ops deciding to put some parts of their inventory on this resource sharing platform, so that they could mutualize, and share, so they can reduce their spending acquiring new equipment or new materials, for example. So the idea there is to build a bridge between these holochain apps. So holochain is this distributed framework. It's this peer-to-peer technology, right? It's a non-blockchain technology, but it's part of the families of these distributed frameworks, and it allows you to write applications on top of that. It's use this framework to build applications, and these applications are serverless, so you don't need a server. So they run on your machine and they synchronize with applications of your peers that run on their machine. So we use DHT tables, a bit like Torrent, in order to synchronize these agents or these nodes, have them like share data and so on and so forth. So then we decided to make also the case for B2B, not just P2P, for these co-ops. So we said, okay, co-ops, they may run their business on some type of ERP systems. Could be, I don't know, could be Dolly Bar, could be something like Udo, something like that. So some of these ERP systems are open source. They run on a server. So essentially, the organization has, the ERP installed on the server, and every employee is a client, and they just go and interact with each other via this server side application. So what we did was to, once you spin up your server for your ERP, for your company or co-op, you also spin up a node and they talk to each other. So we build this bridge between Holochain and a traditional centralized ERP system. So now your enterprise becomes a node in this Holochain network. And if you want a metaphor to describe how it works, so picture that your enterprise is your computer with your operating system, and you're on a torrent network, and you go through your files of music, and you select a bunch of them, and you seed them, you mark them to be seeded to Tor. So once these files are marked to be seeded to Tor, not Tor, torrent. So once these files have been marked to be seeded into torrent, the torrent file sharing protocol takes over, the activities on these files. So your peers discover them, and they can decide to download them. Okay, and you serve them to the network. So that's the same thing here. You have an enterprise, and you run your ERP, which is the OS of your enterprise. And you have an inventory where you list your resources, and you may have, like, I don't know, materials, consumables, equipment that you use in your shop to produce your project. And maybe you have a CNC machine that you use only 10% of the time. Well, you can right click on that and mark it to be shared on the non-dominium resource protocol, right? And once that item in your inventory is shared, then that protocol takes over. So somebody that discovers it in the network, so you have 10 co-ops sharing resources with this. So the non-dominium becomes the sort of the mycelium, becomes this layer where companies tie into each other, connect each other. It's like your desktop machine connects with other desktop machines using the torrent file sharing protocol. In our case, the non-dominium is for sharing physical resources. So you go into your inventory, you right click, you say, okay, my CNC, I seed it to.
If I can interrupt real quick, the reason why I was laughing is literally the main project I'm working on. We're kind of doing the same thing in a completely different metaphor, and that's with libraries, and it's for the same thing. So it's like, and it's funny because within our system, and I would love to talk to you more about this, about kind of even making you guys, we would just consider you a library if you have things to share and there's terms on the sharing. But I'm laughing because what we're trying to do is actually federate exactly that, so that, and now we're much more, in your terms, B2C. But there's an interesting idea, I think, to even, I'm not saying you guys should do this, but you can literally just picture what you guys are doing. It's a library for co-ops. You know what I mean? It's saying, hey, we have capital goods. Co-op A wants to borrow it, and you treat it, we use the term library because it's very accessible to people in a way that, like, a lot of times other things aren't. To be like, it's a library. You get a book, you take care of it, you bring it back. If you don't bring it back, we charge you. If you don't, if you damage it, we charge you. And otherwise, but that's how things work. And people are used to being like, oh, I have to wait in line. Oh, I have to go first, and things like that. So that's the thing where we're good. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm just laughing out. Like, it's funny because these concepts are, you know what I mean? We keep seeing them pop up in different ways all over. Anytime we look for an alternative to the stupid ways we're doing things now, you keep seeing these patterns of like, hey, there's a lot of capability here, and we're just not using it efficiently. And what you're talking about, exactly that. Like, I've got a CNC machine. I use it one day out of a month. Well, why don't I make this available to the community, and then everyone will have more everyone's more productive, everyone's richer. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to.
Yes.
I love
It's okay. Yeah. So I'm very interested in how you approach this. So yeah, definitely send me some links and I'll send you some links too. The way we're doing this with non-dominium with Holochain, because of Holochain's architecture, it allows us to do something interesting, which is to separate resources from organizations. Okay, so we can represent a physical resource as in a digital space, in this shared digital space, as organization agnostic. And once you do that, you're essentially detaching the organization from you're detaching the resource from the organization's governance context. Okay, so if you knock on the door of a company and say, "Hey, I want to use your CNC machine," they're gonna say, "Well, let me ask my boss. Like, what are the rules? Who can use this thing, and in what circumstances?" And so they're gonna turn inwards and see what are our protocol? What is our protocol for having a stranger walk in and use our stuff, right? So it's internal governance that runs that. And so if when you right click on that CNC machine in your inventory list, detaches it from your organization, meaning giving it to a sharing protocol, what it means is that you're reconstructing the digital entity of that thing as an organization agnostic thing. And this is what reduces friction. This is what allows these things to flow in between organizations. So you're putting it into an inter-organizational space, which is this Holochain app, okay? And it's represented by a resource that has its own governance, meaning governance is attached now to the resource. So essentially, when you're sharing your CNC into the network, what you're doing is to say, I'm signing off the governance, the local governance surrounding this resource, okay, and accept to adopt, okay, a new set of rules, a governance that is attached to the risk to this digital twin, let's say, on this non-dominium app, on this non-dominium Holochain app. So I'm as a boss of the company or as whatever representative of the co-op, I'm just by this gesture, I'm just saying this resource will be governed by this new set of rules. And these new set of rules now are associated with the resource, and they go whatever the resource go. So everybody has to obey by them because they sign a recurring contract once custodianship is transferred for the resource to another agent. So architecturally speaking, this is what we are able to do. Okay, it's to abstract resources from organizations to make them exist in an organizational agnostic space. And then so governance is intimately associated with the resource.
Mm-hmm.
And then all these capabilities, the ways you interact with the resources, go through this governance layer. So the governance is seen as an operator on a resource. If you want an object language, you have so governance is an operator that changes the state of a resource. So anytime an agent wants to initiate an action on that resource, the governance layer validates whatever it takes: credentials, history of activities, reputation of that person, is there a payment involved or not, etc., etc. Okay, and just based on this validation, make processes, then the action is done or not, and the state of the resource is changed or not, meaning the resource is in use now. The resource has changed location, physical location. The custodian of this resource has changed. Now the responsibility passes from X to Y, and so on and so forth.
I see.
Yeah, and then yes, you could have transactional rails attached to that if the resource is for let's say not just borrowing but renting. then there are transactions associated with that. So if you want to rent it, then you have to pay a fee. You can even sell it if you want. But we're not focusing on these transactional applications yet. We don't want to reproduce Facebook Marketplace or Airbnb or Uber with this, because I just think it's not fun to just reproduce capitalistic things. I think what's more interesting here for us is to say, how can organizations and people bypass the market and the financial system to mutualize resources? How can they engage in economic processes, doing more with what they have collectively, okay, and bypassing, I don't know, making that non-transactional, meaning yes, there may be currencies involved, but maybe non-monetary currencies, and maybe not transactions. I mean, yes, there is transactions when you move a thing in space, but in a sense that you could have something like BitTorrent. It's like, hey, are you seeding? So are you seeding music into the network? If you're not seeding, then you're capped on what you can take.
Yeah, kind of,
Okay.
and actually kind of bring it back. Sorry, I do have to drop before too long, but that's actually one of the reasons why kind of was looking at the labor vouchers and hours to begin with. It is not a one size fits all thing. It's simply that it is, and this is something that goes back to like the 19th century, right? It was an idea of something that avoids financialization. And I think we're talking in the same area where it's like and to me that was always the power of cryptocurrency. It's not like a way to do get rich quick, rug pull, all this crap that the right has unfortunately turned it into. It's the idea that we can create a currency. I got hooked on this stuff with a thing called Ripple Pay in 2005, which it's funny because Gnosis has reinvented this with circles of just saying that, look, I'm willing to say that you're allowed to borrow $100 from me. You're willing to say that Mateo is allowed to borrow $200 from you. So therefore, you just do transitive properties. And guess what? We've created money. And to your larger point, we now have the ability to create capital for ourselves so that we do not have to work. And this is where my left-wing politics comes in. My surplus value isn't being taken by an employer. It's not being taken by a landlord. To me, that's what we're trying to get at. But regardless of the reasons why we want to do this, we can say that, look, we do not think the current monetary system where everything is turned into a euro or a dollar and financialized is working for a lot of people. And this is, so to me, and it's funny because I'm someone talking very left-wing things and saying, well, we set up exchanges for it. But what we're doing is we're setting up an exchange to say, look, we are making a valuation on this. And it is not necessarily always one-to-one, but we're saying that we think, for example, the labor token, I think your time is worth something. The circles thing, Gnosis is doing, they call it a UBI. They're saying, we think that you coming on the platform once a day is worth something. Clicking a button is worth something. How much do I think of my time do I think that's worth? Well, that's what we can do with exchange, because that way that allows us a plurality of opinion without being stuck within this financialized system. Because to my mind, the financial system says, well, the only thing that matters is who has money right now, not necessarily what's most productive, even what's most entrepreneurial or what's going to invent. It's so I don't know. That's my take on it, but yeah. But yeah, I love what you guys are doing, and like I said, it's funny because it rhymes a lot with what some of the groups I'm working with are trying to do. But I do think, yeah, as far as like the thing in that we're talking about, like in particular, I don't think the hours are the ideal mix for you. I think it could be part of the mix. You know what I mean? I think what you guys, I would say, yeah, the citizen wallet thing, that I think a token could be useful for you guys, an internal token. And if that's backed up or exchangeable for hours, happy to walk along with that. But I think if trying to just do hours is not going to fit for what you guys are trying to do at all, because you want to be able to pay, like, to say that, hey, you loaned out the CNC machine and it's worth X amount, and this is B2B, and it's like it gets so far away that it would make either the hour worthless or your guys' thing. You'd be trying to turn everything into hours in a nonsensical way, and it's much easier. Given, I can tell you right now what the cost of running the token is. It's $600 a year. That's it. You know what I mean? That comes with the app, and that's pretty much like the Cadillac plan. I think they might even have lower price things. That gives you the app so that you can basically, people don't have to learn. I don't know about custom development, but I can tell you right now, I just looked on the app. They have, I sound like I'm selling Citizen Wallet. I'm not trying to, but they have basically descriptions, which I believe go into the blockchain already. So a real quick reskinning even of the app to just have a required field would take care of all those needs you were talking about to say, hey, you have to provide a role. We don't allow you to exchange without that. So, and then if you guys are interested, again, happy to say you guys are doing things we like, we'll issue you hours and you will issue them for time. And then we'll set up an exchange so you can do your currency into hours and vice versa.
All right.
And yeah, and the idea is that the hours are backed at some level with bread. And again, bread, it's just these degrees because bread is tied to money. So bread is 1-to-1. We're not 1-to-1, but we're exchangeable. And you guys would not be 1-to-1 with ours, but you're exchangeable. And everyone, that way, I think it generates a value as a whole because every currency that I can transfer our local currency to gives me more value because my number one worry is, hey, I'm gonna wind up with a bunch of this stuff that's worth nothing. The more things it's exchangeable for, the less worry I have to have about that, and the more value it gives to me.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, the bad econ minor, which is the worst thing. So I only know enough to just be stupid. It's why like fiat currencies are good in general. I have to pay taxes in them. So eventually, I mean, like you can pay me your currency all I want, but when the Spanish government says they want euros, if I don't have euros, I have a real problem. So like, as long as I can navigate that path somehow, I'll be okay. Yeah.
I understand. Yes. We have to plug into this crazy world for.
It's one of the reasons I've always liked the Bread Project. It's realistic. I mean, like a lot of people are like, oh, well, no, we should break everything and start our own da-da-da. And it's like, that doesn't work for, I mean, I got to pay for my kids' school. I got to get food on the table. And until you can solve those problems, at least temporarily, and that's why I do like about this space a lot. I think it's people that are working for like, let's make something material now that can get us there.
Good. Yeah, me too. I have a hard stop because I need to get ready to run. But
cool. Yeah, I'm here. I'll shoot emails, Mastodon, let me whatever you guys want.
Are we connected? Are we connected on Discord?
Please, yeah. I sometimes leave my Discord off because I'm old. But so yeah, absolutely. Please reach out to me here and I'll give you other ways to contact. I would love to keep in contact with you guys. Can share some of the other stuff that's in process as well. Because I think we're working along very similar paths.
Okay. If not, Unai, can you